Thank you.
Hello.
Hello. So now my mind is very nice and quiet. There's a deep peace and stillness. But I did arrive with a question, so I'm going to drag that question up. When the mind is particularly active due to being triggered, and it's a mind-body situation, there's the thinking that's running, and there's also like a physical sensation. It's like they kind of go hand in hand. And sometimes it can just be for a short period of time, sometimes it can be longer. But more recently, there's been something that has been reoccurring that's been very triggering. And it rises up, and then it goes, and it rises up. But is there anything that you can speak about when you're in the grip of the turmoil, other than being the witness and waiting for it to pass?
Well, it is definitely interesting to look more closely at this moment of what you call triggering. You see, so tell me more precisely what happens. Triggering.
Yeah, so it's right now it's around a particular event and a particular person, and the mind goes. It's I don't want to say it's PTSD because I've not been labeled with that, so I don't know. But there's a sensation of panic, and that I have to get away somehow, and then the mind has its looping thoughts.
So are you saying that it's a kind of threat?
It feels like a threat, yes.
Okay, so this is what I said. You see, we have to look more closely into the moment of triggering. The threat is a situation in which your attention is not precisely onto the fear itself. But rather it is fixated on objects of fear, objects that cause fear, you see? So in a sense, the situation of a threat in at least 95% of the cases, this situation is characterized by a misunderstanding of the one involved in the threat, because you see, the threat is always an object that you perceive, right? It could be a person, it could be also another object, it could be an animal, it could be a situation made up by thoughts. There are many different possibilities, but they all have one in common. It's objects in your mind that threaten you. So in this situation, you see, it is important to redirect the attention onto the fear itself. In a paradoxical way, people are threatened by fear. This is called the fear of fear. you know? So if you manage to completely dive with your attention into fear itself, no more objects of fear, but just the fear itself, finding union with fear, then the situation that you beforehand used to call threat is not anymore the same. Fear is one of the great inner frauds of mankind. That's why what fear means is false evidence appearing real. It is true that there are very few people that have completely realized fear. But most people are driven by fear. Almost everybody is more or less driven by fear, which is latently present and then appears to the surface in certain moments. But also in the moments it's not present, it is latently present. And this happens as long as, you know, this person has not realized fear. You see? Realizing fear also means becoming one with fear. Becoming one with fear, becoming one with everything. Becoming one with fear means taking away the attention from the object of fear and allowing yourself to dive into fear itself. I know this is an advanced instruction, you know? I mean, I've been trying to give this instruction to my students for years, you know? It's an advanced instruction. That's why I've written a book about this. Because fear is a complex system and inner situation that is hard for most people to really see through this fraud. So if it doesn't work at the beginning, do it again until you know, you realize what I just said. Take away the attention from any object of fear. There's only one possibility with fear. It means to become one with fear, you see? But almost everybody, of course, more or less, confuses fear with certain objects of fear, which is not fear itself. It doesn't matter whether we're talking about outer or inner objects. You see, objects are objects. So an object could be a tiger in the jungle. It could also be a thought. You see, they seem very different, but from a very abstract standpoint, a thought is an object and a tiger in the jungle is another object. You see, there is no absolutely fundamental difference in the inner teachings.
When you said the fixation of fear, I heard what you said about putting all my attention on the fear when it's there, not on the object, but actually on the fear. But is the fixation, is that something to do with the mind? Like it's fixating on fear? Where's the fixation part?
The fixation part this try to describe that the mind is constantly fixated on objects. You see, this is actually creating the inner dualistic situation, that the mind is constantly fixated on objects. You see, this is the classical dualistic situation. There is a subject, you know, I call this me, and then there is an object, I call it you. This you doesn't have to be another person. This you can be any kind of relation with objects, you see. You could be a country, America. The you could be a society, a system, anything, which makes up the you, and there is a dualistic situation between me and you see? So, why does this happen? Why is this the constant reality of people? Because the mind is fixated on objects. Actually, you see, through the fixation of the mind, this becomes an object. See, if the mind were not fixated on it, it were not an object, you see. Let's take this chair. I mean, everybody would agree that this is an object, you see, but it's not truly the case, you see. An object has the reference of a subject. If this dualistic situation is not anymore happening, the object kind of dissolves, you see. So it is not evident that this chair is an object, you see. It's not evident. It's just, for ordinary people it is evident. But looked in truth, it's not evident that this is an object. Objects dissolve when the mind detaches the attention. The whole world of objects is only surviving because of the fixation of the mind in people. You know, otherwise it would be something different. It would be maybe just, you know, some free-flowing energy field, for example. But to make it an object, you see, there has to be a mind that creates a relation, you see. Without relation, it's not an object. So if I have a relation with you, you see, like this is also like partnerships happen like this, you know, marriages. I have a relation with the you, and the you is my object, and I marry my object, you see. My partner is my object. Yeah, it's not nice to put it that way, but this is a sober understanding of inner science, you see, on the path. I marry my object. You know, my partner is my object. And that's why I would like to, I might not totally admit, but of course that's why I would like to possess more or less the object, you know? Because it's my object. This is just a consequence of a view that cannot just simply be dissolved. You know, it's the status quo of mind. The mind is. This is what the mind is creating. It's the basic situation of every human being inside. And with this example of the fear, you can make the experience of how this situation, the fixation on objects, can dissolve. You know, I'm not talking about anything theoretical. I'm not talking about a philosophical concept. I'm talking about everything I'm talking about is only coming from self-inquiry. And the philosophy is only the organization of what self-inquiry has revealed in wise people. So then, if you're one with fear itself, you see, you have managed to reject every object, you see. When you have, for example, you came close to fear, and you think, oh, this is fear. You see, this is fear. Now I've got it. But then, it could be that you realize, oh, no, wait a minute, this is just another object, you know, it's not fear itself, you see. Then let go of this object. Then you get to the next layer. You see, this is how it works. Because there is a complete confusion between objects and what it is itself. This is back to our original situation, the threat, you see, the threat. An object is threatening you. The object itself might not be threatening, you see, but the fear has been projected onto this object, so that's threatening, you see, now this is threatening. The fear has to come back in the attention to the place where it is. A projected fear is not in the original place. And this is what happens with many things, you see. They are not in the right place. Meaning they're not inside where they should be. I mean, the truth is they still are inside, but the person doesn't realize that they are inside.
That's very helpful. Thank you. I've worked in hospice and been with people end of life, so I think I convinced myself that I was okay with fear. So this is another layer, and it's very helpful to receive your words around that the fear is that it's in me. I kind of put a band-aid over it, I think. It's like, oh, I've addressed fear. I'm not a fearful person, but I am projecting it onto a particular object, and I can look at it in a different way and see it within my own self and not have it projected out onto an object.
Well, you see, this happening is of tragic consequences. I mean, because looking into the outside world, it drives the total reality of the outside world in people. You see, let's talk about. I mean, no, let's not talk about. But let's give you this example of the hostility between Republicans and Democrats, or you see, or this extreme violence in the United States. You know, no Western country has so many imprisoned people in the United States. So, what does this come from? You see, this is all linked to a tragic situation of projected fear. You see, everybody is projecting fear everywhere, and no one is able to realize fear itself. You see, nobody has any idea where fear is. You see, I see this man with a gun, and of course I will be frightened, and it's obvious that the fear comes from outside. You see, but nobody has this realization that this is really a fraud of my own fear, you see. And fear does not only create fear, but fear also creates violence. It is all coming from fear. And this simple explanation I'm just giving you, I mean, millions of people should hear this, but they can't hear it, you see. They're not able to hear this, because only a mature person that has any clue of the inner path will listen to these words. Everybody else would be completely misled and go after the projected fear which is on the object, but not inside, you see. Nobody is realizing it inside, and people are killing themselves and fighting against each other and doing all kinds of things, violent things, because there's fear everywhere. You see, the whole network of people, the whole of society, also the American society, is completely full of fear, but fear is never and nowhere at in its place. It's not inside, you see. It's not realized in its place. So I'm just saying that this is not a small detail, you see. This is a tragic, monstrous detail of the inner world with absolute consequences, you see. But we cannot change this, you see. We cannot change this. Because you cannot give any talk or any instruction of the inner path to a person on the outer path. You see, it's not possible. They're just washed away. They're not going to wake up, and there's nothing you can do about it.